Very, very good morning to those of you joining us from India. Good afternoon to those of us joining from Singapore and Malaysia and wherever you all are. Good evening, whatever time of the day it is for you. But thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. And yes, I see the interaction going. That's what I want. Over the webinar, I will be throwing a few questions like this, and please just feel free and share for whatever thoughts come to your mind, okay? That way we all learn, it's interactive, and it's engaging. Okay, so Shripurna says, Buffett. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to start off, in fact, the usual way. I just happened to see an article which comes on my Facebook via CNBC. And I saw this article on Starbucks CEO writing to his employees saying, let us all be nice, or let us be more understanding to our customers now, because there's a lot of uncertainty and there are a lot of these worried investors because of the stock market fall. And I was like, okay, what timing? So one more company that has to come to our mind when we talk business acumen is, of course, Starbucks. Not only did he manage his business and transformation, but the way he drills down to the message to every employee. Anyway, we'll talk more about this as we go, but if you all haven't read that article, please just find it. You should be able to Google it and find it. Okay, so what are we here for today? The topic for today is business acumen. I'm sure you all would have heard of this term in some context or the other, yeah? It's nothing new, something we've always heard of, especially those of us in the industry. I'm sure you've heard of it. So why are we talking about it today, and what is the relevance? Well, that is one thing we'll address as we're going. There has been some kind of an evolution in the concept. There has been some kind of re-looking or revisiting interest from businesses, leaders, CEOs on this topic. And why this renewed interest today on business acumen? That is what we'll see as we go. While doing that, we are also going to address things like what exactly makes up for business acumen. What are the skills? What are the competencies that we look for when we say business acumen? We look at business acumen in some functional areas, some examples basically, and also look at some examples of how companies are actually building business acumen within the organization. So that pretty much is the agenda for today's talk, okay? So like I said, is it a new concept? No, not really. I'm sure we've all heard, and you all have already put the messages in there, which means we've heard of it. And there are some people, some companies that come to our mind immediately. And yes, for me, the first flash for us coming from India, it is Dhirubhai Ambani, right? You see, this is so business savvy that we used to call. So it is not a new concept. We have thought of it in terms like, okay, you're great at numbers. You look at a balance sheet, you know it makes sense to you. You know what the customers are thinking. You can think long term. It has been around from the times of Ford to the latest and greatest companies today. So nothing new. But what has changed is the fact that it has evolved from an entrepreneurial or a leadership skill to what I would say a managerial skill. Like I said, and look at the responses that we have up there. They are all leaders. They are all founders. They are all investors. Where it is very easy to see that I make a decision and that decision has an impact on the company straight away. So it is not hard, right? The first thing, we think business acumen, we think leaders, we think CEOs, we think senior executives, we think entrepreneurs, Richard Branson, these are the names that come to us. But that is what is changing, and that is why we are revisiting it today. That is why there is a renewed attention to this topic today. Why it has changed? Well, that is what we will see as we go. So before we go, yes, it is no longer just for these people. This is how we have always looked at business acumen, and this is what it meant to us, but we are going far beyond these people. Trust me, when I started working on this presentation, I thought, well, it's going to be just pick these big leaders and the great companies, and we talk about how they have used their business acumen to transform companies. But I'm sure you've heard plenty of those stories, and we've seen plenty of those transformation studies. It would be interesting, no doubt. But I was surprised when I did my research to find out that the reason it is gaining importance today is not because of this. It is gaining importance because today the leaders are saying it is not sufficient if I as a leader have business acumen. What we want is every single person in the organization to have that acumen. And why? Well, we'll go to it. The complex environment that we are functioning in today, I'm sure you've heard of this as well. What we call, and I'll refer to this often today, is the VUCA environment. That's exactly what's in the article I mentioned just now on Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks, in the letter that he wrote to his people. The extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous kind of environment. In such an environment where business models that could survive for like 8 to 10 years, or sometimes you could build an entire legacy with a successful business model. Today, business models need to be revisited once in 3 to 4 years, or maybe faster in some industries. So in such an environment, how do companies grow? How do you outpace your competitors? Is it sufficient for the leader to show the vision and the agility? No, the entire company has to follow that agility, right? And that is where they said we need to build better business people, of course, better leaders, but we need to have better business people all throughout the organization. Yes, Ravi, a highly dynamic business environment. So most of the reference that I made to today will be individual and organizational, obviously, right? I mean, it is the people, after all, who are running these organizations, and we're not talking people only at the senior or the leadership level today. We are referring to just about everyone related to the organization. So that's another key takeaway here, that it is, if as an individual I have great business acumen, I have a great sense for the business, my performance in some way or the other is going to impact the organizational business acumen. Okay, so that is the background to the talk today. So I'll start off with a very, very simple example, something I think we can all relate to. So the story goes this way. We have this great person called Robert, and Robert is a call center supervisor. He feels that he's a very dedicated employee, and he is, because he works hard, and he has a goal. His goal is that he wants to save the company money. Why? Because he has the fear that if the costs go up, then my call center is going to be outsourced. So he found a way of trying to manage this. And what is his way? He says, I wouldn't recommend employees for recognition or raises because that would increase my costs. He would ignore ideas on a new software or equipment when they would come from his team members. In general, when there is a development, this new tool can save me more money. He would ignore those ideas out of fear that that will increase the costs. Okay, and his focus was very clearly that answer as many calls as you can as quickly as possible, and through the calls upsell to the customers as much as possible. So focus, cost control, and yes, he did his job extremely well, and he imposed that on the team as well. Okay? So now, question to you all. If you were Robert's manager, you were the manager of the call center supervisor, what do you think of Robert? What do you think of what he is doing? Quick responses, folks, so we can move. There's nothing about right or wrong answers. Just want to get a sense of whether I'm, reaching you. Okay, not doing the right thing, not relevant to business need. Hang on, only operational focus. Very good point, Nityanand. Focused on just delivery. Yes, and this is what it is. He feels he's doing a wonderful job, and for his particular role within his sphere, he feels he's doing a great job. But is that right? We all know today that it is not correct. It's a very, very short-term view. Yes, Ravi. It's a short-term view. He is not able to think of big picture. He's thinking of how I can reduce costs now. He doesn't see that these employees, if you're not keeping them happy, are going to leave, and that is just going to increase the cost for the company, right? Amit, you're making a point here saying no one has shown him the incentive to not do otherwise. Yes, this is another scenario. Is it Robert's fault? Well, maybe the company has not, conveyed the message to him. We will address that point as well. But coming back to Robert, he's not been able to connect the dots to see how I can show some future direction. This is lack of business acumen. Okay, so the result, obviously, the company saw that, well, he may be good at what he does, but he's not management material. So we need to, maybe put him on some skills development kind of program. But we know that that's not so easy, so he often was getting sidelined, and he never understood why he was getting sidelined. Okay, so that was the sad story. Is this just Robert's problem? No, it is. There are a lot of Roberts out there. And let me be very honest. I think when I started working as an engineer in quality assurance in my first job, I remember the first 1 or 2 years when I was asked questions like, so what is the investment in the company? I was working in a very, very new manufacturing facility. I was clueless. All I knew was my job is quality assurance. I'm going to make sure, there is no reject and so on. But I never thought beyond that. So it is not just Robert's problem. And like someone mentioned, it is probably also the responsibility of his managers and the company that these objectives are not trickling down. Most of the times, either leaders assume that the teams know the big picture, or it is avoided because the big picture is complex. Imagine today as a manager, if I tell you, please go train your entire team on business acumen. It is not easy because business acumen is about a lot of things. You have people at different levels. You have people coming from absolutely different backgrounds. How are you going to do that? Yeah, so it is really a big problem. But today, based on your responses, I know you recognize that if he had that acumen, if he had the understanding that I am thinking short term, I need to think more long term, productivity, tools that can make me more efficient, recognizing the good employees. These are things that you do for long run. These are things that will help the company sustain profitability. These are things that will align with my company's vision, right? That is where business acumen would have helped. So now what is business acumen? Well, simply put, a very, very simple way is just a simple understanding of how a company makes money. Yes, it is simple, but you and I know that if I take it to different contexts, I take it to a SME versus a multinational versus a entrepreneurial firm, it's different in every single context. And that is where the challenge comes, right? I have also included another definition here, ability to create capital, deliver positive financial results. Now, this is a definition that caters more to business acumen when we refer to business acumen for leaders, which is what we have always done. But today we are keeping it more general. We are saying it is for everyone. So it is about understanding how a company makes money. What is the business model that my company has? Who are the customers? Who are the stakeholders? And how is my company making money? What are the costs? And how, most importantly, what I do has an impact on the company's vision or the company's bottom line. Now that is where we kind of lose out. Just to be able to connect as an individual, as a person working in your company, how does my work relate directly to the results or the outcome for the company? Okay, that is business acumen. So it is a set of competencies and completely multidisciplinary. That is why I said it is not easy, right? There's a strategic perspective. Now, I have listed only 3 perspectives there. You will find literature that will talk about plenty of other perspectives. But broadly speaking, and something that makes sense to us here is thinking strategy. What is the product? How should I price the product? When do I launch the product? Financial acumen. Do I understand the results? Can I understand the balance sheet? Do I know what's profit, loss? Simple financial data. Market orientation, understanding the market, the industry market that your company is working in. Competitors, what are the threats that we face today? Who are my customers? What is it that they like? These are things that make up for business acumen. A lot of times it's an assumption that do I need to know finance? Do I need to know economics? Because this is how people deal with business acumen. They send you to a course or maybe knowledge on finance or economics. But the evolution, now remember I said it is being revisited for one reason is that it is important for everyone. But the second thing is it has gone beyond just the financial knowledge or understanding the data, beyond the balance sheet. Yes, you need to be able to understand some of the numbers that are up there on the balance sheet, but it is a lot more than that. And today it is about the set of behaviors. What we are trying to say here is it is how you act, how you behave, your decisions that you make. That may not be finance related. Robert's decision was not always got to do with finance. It was about how he managed his people. It was about how he decided to service his customers. It can be just about anything. But it is the impact of these behaviors, these personality traits, your emotions, your psychology, and how that impacts the bottom line of that company. So that is why we are saying it is now about a set of behaviors. I'm not sure how many of you have heard about behavioral finance. So today we are drawing upon behavioral finance, which is now saying, and this has happened after years, after seeing all the scams that have happened, after seeing how anyone can make or break a company, whether or not he understands the finance, that it is not only about the numbers, but it is about the psychology, the emotions, how a person reacts in a certain, in a situation of an uncertain environment, the VUCA environment. Remember, if I put each one of us in a VUCA environment, we would all react differently. And that is where you have irrational behaviors, right? And that irrational behavior is what we are trying to deal with. That everybody reacts differently, and we have to deal even with that aspect, not just the knowledge of finance and economics. Okay, so another question we get asked, so is it a gut feel? Remember, when we talk about Ambani, Warren Buffett, you see, oh, they are born, you know, they have that natural talent, something we can all relate to. Roger Federer, just say, oh, he's completely from a different planet. He just has it in him. You know, we've heard so much of this that we feel it is a gut feel. It is something we are born with. But People have different views. You must know Ram Charan if you've read his books on execution, a very, very famous book. If you've done your MBA, then you would have come across this book. He says that look at business acumen as know-how, how to react in a situation, or how I learn a certain skill. And he's listed about 8 know-hows, and he says it is about knowing these 8 know-hows or acquiring these 8 know-hows through deliberate practice. You may not know all of them. The broader the variety of know-hows you have, or the wider the know-hows, then obviously you have better skills. Of course, his comments here and his writing here was to leaders, was basically meant for leaders, that the wider you know how, then you make a much better leader, okay? But for us, it basically is telling us it is not all gut feel. It is definitely a skill that can be acquired as well. This concept of deliberate practice, I got this from the book that I put up here, Talent is Overrated. And he studies basically a very encouraging book. If you get a chance, I think you should read. I don't say I agree with the book completely, but there are things that you would very nicely relate to. He says when you practice in a particular way, then any skill can be acquired. Well, that's what we want to know, right? End of the day, I want to grow. I want to develop these skills. If these skills are going to get me to the top management or help me achieve my goals, then that's what I want to know, how I can learn. And he says, practice in a certain way will allow you to learn these skills. So our question is basically answered. It's not just gut feel, because in a VUCA environment, you need more than just gut feel. Yes, probably in the early days when the variables were limited, when we were not really talking about a global environment or a flat world, you could get away with gut feel. But today we know that it is a lot more complicated. There are too many variables. We need more skills than just the gut feel. So what does business acumen mean for managers? Skills, like I said, be able to see the bigger picture, understand the impact of your work and your decisions on the company. And does it align with what your leaders have in mind? The benefits, well, like I said, the benefits are individual, professional, personal, but eventually do translate to organizational benefits as well. That is something we do not want to forget, yeah? So yes, it makes me visible. Yes, it will make me appear more intelligent. And how many times, and again, I would really like responses here. How many times have you been in situations, maybe a social gathering or a social setting or a town hall meeting called by your CEO or an all-hands call, and you feel you have something to say regarding the business or the company strategy, but you hesitate. You stop yourself because you feel, I may not have the right words. Oh, what if I have understood this wrongly? I am sure we would have all gone through that. We may have that idea, but we hesitate. Why? You feel you misunderstood. You may feel you're not going to use the right terms. Now, this is where business acumen is going to help you. And that definitely is an individual or a personal accomplishment, right? But if you learn those skills, if you're more confident to say, sir, I think this number says this. I think this is the trend, and we need to relook at this. Then it's a different kind of confidence. It tells your leaders, it tells your managers, this guy is leadership material. This guy has the business acumen that we're looking for, and I should send him out for training. And that's the sad part, Unless you show these skills, you're not sent for these leadership trainings. Or as much as we all feel that you first train us and then I'll grow, you need to show these skills. So definitely you must agree with me that these skills need to be demonstrated, and for that we need a little bit of that acumen. And well, you know, if you're not sent for the training, there are a lot of other ways you can develop this. I'll share some results with you as we go. So bottom line, if it helps me secure a seat at the table, whether it's the board table or the management table or the senior management role or whatever it is you're looking for, then why not? That is a benefit. For leaders, there's no argument here. I showed you plenty of leaders right on my first slide saying how important it is and how they have been able to transform their companies, how they have been able to turn around their companies in a volatile environment like this, just because they've shown amazing business acumen and translates directly to a capability of the company. You know, leaders, when we look at leaders, we think interpersonal skill. We think charisma. We think amazing oratory skills, the passionate guys who can inspire and who can motivate. But you know today that it is a lot more than that, because I have to survive. My company has to remain profitable. There are new entrants every other day. So I need a combination of skills. So that is how it has changed for leaders. But otherwise, we know how important business acumen is for leaders. How does this translate to business acumen for organizations? Well, one way was obvious, right? If I have a great leader with a business acumen, then the results are obvious. If I have employees, just imagine if everyone in the company knows how his job is going to impact the vision, then the capability that the organization develops, like I said, the CEO decides, or the senior management decides, the trend is cloud computing. We have to start positioning ourselves as a cloud computing company. And immediately, the whole organization, and just imagine if it's $1 billion or a $2 billion company, how is it possible for the company to kind of realign themselves to a new vision or a new strategy? That agility is probably easy for an individual or for 10 individuals. It is difficult, extremely difficult when we talk about that agility for an organization. And that is why the business acumen has to trickle down to every layer of the company. I know this is talk. I know it is very, very difficult to implement this. Now, if some of you may have experienced this, I mean, if you're in sales especially, there is a lot of disconnect between the departments of a company. There are so many competing agendas. Company A has acquired company B. The people of company A and B are supposed to now go to the market together, have to work together, but they don't. Because the incentives are just conflicting. They see no benefit in wanting to work with B. And that not wanting to work with each other actually doesn't work for the company's vision. It does not align with the objective of the company. Yes, I mean, this happens day in and day out. And this is what we're talking about. Okay, I will build that business acumen. And a lot of times why this happens is for the leaders on the top who have a bird's eye view. They cannot come down to our level and see where that conflict is happening. So I need my mid-managers, I need my immediate managers to understand this conflict. I need my mid-manager to understand how this conflict is affecting the bottom line of the company, and for him to take it to the top management, which again is a gap. We don't see that happen a lot, right? Peter, would coaching be a solution for this? Well, we'll talk about it. I'll show you some examples of how companies are doing it. Yes, some companies do it better than the others, and probably that's what differentiates them. So that is where the gap is. The moment it comes to an organizational capability, it is very, very complicated. And it has also been identified as a skill that organizations lack. This is a latest study that's been done that says this is not happening, and this is where we need to develop. We now move to the examples. I think enough talking. I'll just show some examples. Anyone know about anything about Ford and Model T? Now remember, this example is very, very old. And that's what I want to show you, that we've been talking business acumen for ages, but it's also going to show you how it has changed. Yes. So when Ford launched this model, okay, it was an instant sensation. He called the model, it was Model T. The car was Model T. It was a wonderful car, easy to drive, easy to repair. And in those days, when this car came in, and it was priced very low, okay, it kind of changed the perception that car is something that the ultra-rich or the super-rich can only have. This car made it possible for even a middle-class person to say that, okay, we can also consider getting an automobile. So instant success. Now, if you are the CEO of Ford, okay, no harm in thinking, if you are the CEO of Ford, something that you have launched has made instant success, sensational, maybe way beyond your dreams, what would you do? Again, remember, there's no right or wrong answer. What has happened, but no harm guessing. Yeah. So what would you all do? Anyone? Take it across the globe. Replicate it. Okay, go on, more. I'm sure, yes, increase volumes. Okay, so this is what it is. Each one of us thinks different. Remember, I mentioned behavioral finance. Exactly. We all think differently. Offer many colors. Amit, that was my first thought as well. Offer many colors and line extensions. Okay, so let's see what Henry Ford decided to do. He said, you know what? Double the wages of all the people we have, drop the prices of Model T further to an extent that he dropped the prices to almost half of its original price. Remember, it was already a low-priced car, but he dropped it to even more, okay? He dropped it to further half the price. And what do you think happened? Ashok, you think it was a bad idea. Well, let's hope you are put in the situation one day and we'll see what happens. Well, for Henry Ford, whether we agreed or no, his sales skyrocketed. And the best part is his employee retention increase. Now, what remains to, what was interesting here was when that success happened, the way he looked at it, and maybe the way I would have seen it or anyone would have seen it is, you know what, this is great, amazing demand. Maybe I should just make more or sell it in more colors and just try and make as much money as I can out of this success. But he took his vision further and he said, you know what, this success tells me that I can create history. I can increase car ownership, and he did it from 0 to 80%. And our first thought would be that, well, he dropped the prices, he's doubled the wages, his costs would have gone up tremendously. In fact, the volumes actually made up for all of it. Now, this part where he actually thought not only about the fact that I don't want to send any customer home. Anyone who wants a car, I'm not going to send you back home empty-handed. I'm going to give you a car. And if that means I have to pay double, I will do it. He did not ignore the fact that if he has to continue to do it, I have to keep my people happy. I can't have new people. I can't have my existing people leave me. I will not be able to give that quality or what I want to deliver to my customers. So he said, I will double your wages. So he still got the best out of them. That is thinking 360 degrees, not just about the volumes, or just making it an instant success, and thinking far beyond that. I'm going to create history. I know I can make plenty of money of this success, but let me see how can I take it further. That is something. Okay, so that is what we call long-term strategist thinking, which he demonstrated at that time. Remember, at one point in time, not only did he change what car ownership meant, but he changed how half the cars on the road were Model Ts. In fact, in a recent leadership training, I heard about this. The training exercise for leaders said, ended with a workshop on think about something transformative that you will do as a leader. Don't tell me small things like I will meet my numbers or I will double the revenues. They said, think of it as, if I were to ask you, how will you create history? What will you do? And someone I know went through this training, and we were brainstorming in his area of work, how he can create history. Tell me, how many of us think that? I'm sure some of us do, and really hats off to you, but it is something we don't do often. We think about, oh, my work and my performance for this year and how I'm going to do amazingly well in this job, but I've never thought with the job I do, I would never feel that it is so great that I can create history. But that is what he did. He think about breakthrough thinking and making history. So that is what Ford is all about. And the fact that he didn't think just one way. He took care of the other details as well. Okay. Now I'm moving to what it means for different areas. Based on the chat messages I'm seeing here, I'm really happy to know that, you're all aligned with me, so I don't have to really talk much about this. But for those of you in sales, you'll know what I mean. What is the goal for sales? All you need is, I need to close the sales. I have to meet my quota for this quarter. I have to get the commitments, right? Simple. I need that booking in. But sales has gone through a transformation as well. It is no longer about remember the super excited, super enthusiastic telesales guys who would sell or excitedly talk about feature-based and product-based selling. I mean, it happens. It still happens in a lot of industries. But a lot of them, a lot of the sales in a lot of industries has moved towards what we call value-based selling today. That I can take a software and I can sell it to 10 different companies at 10 different prices. And I'm able to do that because the value that software gives to 10 different companies is different. Okay? So that is what the companies are urging you to do. That is how they all want to think. That they want you to say, understand the client, understand the companies, understand their pain points, and position it in such a way that it adds value. Okay, so that is how sales will evolve. Well, I agree, Sudeep, that we know what happens at the end of the quarter, but this is where the direction is. This is where your bosses would kind of push you to. I mean, if you're positioning a software at 100K, why can't you pitch it at 200 and meet more of your number? So what it requires in terms of skill is quickly to be able to ascertain what is the business of my client and how does my product or my software add value to that client for the business that he is in and the business that he does. I have to share something with you here. Again, something I recently read. Michael Porter. And this ties back to the fact that it is not all skill and, it is not all gut feel, but it's a skill. So Porter said, well, before his engagement, he was a management consultant and a guru. So before any consulting engagement, before the first meeting, he said he would spend like 20 hours reading up about the company to understand what their business is. And in 20 hours, he said, I had enough understanding about the company and sometimes maybe as much as the CEO. Well, it may sound like, impossible, and they're talking about days before the internet. But the reason he could do that, because he was an expert, he knew what to look for. He could filter out information that he did not need and focus on the right information. And that is a skill that he developed, right? So that is the kind of skill. So now I'm saying, now we take business acumen, and I say for each of us, it may mean something different depending on the work I do. So let us see what it means for each of us in a different functional area and develop those capabilities. That is why, again, it is challenging when we talk about coaching and training in business acumen, right? So for sales, business generalists, understand your client. I mean, you do that. You read about your clients, I'm sure. We read about the company. If I'm going for a job interview, I spend some time reading about the company to understand what they do. It's something like that. But to be able to understand where the pain points are, you don't want to go and ask them on the first meeting, what are your pain points? But to have a sense of what challenges you think they may be facing because of being in the VUCA kind of environment. Okay, so that is about sales. Another industry, something similar, these are some examples that I found, putting them in. Pharmaceuticals. Here, again, it has changed to the role that your sales representatives actually play. So earlier it was about they were selling the product and pushing the product, but they realized that these people are critical for the numbers, for pharmaceutical companies. So they said, if I have to make these sales reps as decision makers, your business acumen is very, very important for me. But if I have to build your business acumen, then I need all the other support functions lined up. I can't just tell them, go learn business acumen. I need to give them information. What kind of information? He has limited resources. Using those limited resources, how can he maximize his sales? He needs information like, who are the best physicians I need to go and meet today so I can maximize my chances of getting those sales. And this needs a lot of information systems, tools, technologies, people, planning, all of these processes aligned. A lot of information filtering. You can't dump all this information on the sales rep. He can't make sense out of it. So this information has to be filtered and given to him so he knows how he can use it to actually meet his numbers or get those sales in. So this talks about business acumen across, but having all the processes, tools, and systems in place to facilitate building of that business acumen. HR. So this is also something we can all relate to. Mainly considered, well, you're a support function, talent management, recruitment, the typical roles of HR. But in today's VUCA environment, I gave you the example already. The company says, you know what, we're going to do cloud computing today. So imagine the pressure on HR if suddenly the vision changes. And in 3 months, they have to enable people on telling them or teaching them about cloud computing. Well, everyone does not have to go sell. Everybody does not need all the detail. But that in itself is a challenge for HR to enable everybody in a company to be capable enough to understand what the new vision is all about. Okay, so we now talk about HR as capability development. Be able to predict, be aware of what's happening in the industry. So if I am in HR, in the education industry, I have to be able to know what are the trends, what is the industry like, where is it headed, and based on that, what capabilities should I think of enabling my company with? Where do I see the skills will be needed? How do I plan as to where am I going to get the skills from? Your skills are not going to come overnight. You have so many competitors looking for the same kind of talent. Where are you going to get them from? So that thinking happens if you have the foresight, if you are talking to the strategy people, if you are talking to the line managers to understand what their needs are, what the vision is. So that is what it means in a HR context. Well, don't worry, I'm not going to do this test, but just to show there are a lot of tools out there that allow you to assess yourself. This is a very specific one. Taking about how you can understand, so you can go through this and give a yes or no, and at least it will be able to it will help us identify areas where we think we are weak in and focus on those areas to build certain level of competencies, maybe enough to at least have a conversation or make a point of view when we feel we have a great point to make. So based on that, how are companies, Peter, you were asking me, so how are companies, or how we can develop these capabilities? Typically, there are three approaches. Some of them still go old school and talk about financial literacy. Some take it further and say, you know what, we need a lot of business simulation and games here, because simulation is important, right? I give you a business case or a scenario, and I see, sorry about that. I see how you react in a certain business simulation. But the most sought after approach today is the behavioral finance approach. Now, basically, it does not mean we're teaching you behavioral finance. It basically means they get a lot of your data, your personality, your traits, and this is maybe a huge pre-training questionnaire that's given to you, 75 questions, just to understand what kind of person you are, how would you react in different situations, and how the program has to be developed to cater to you. This questionnaire will also help identify where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and how the program should be developed for you. A very idealistic kind of program, difficult because it is customized to each individual. But let's say you are, if you're training a people to a batch of 20, then this is something that is possible to do. Okay, so you combine simulation, but then you're leveraging a lot on the behavioral finance as well. Example of companies doing it, we have Xcel Energy, a utility company that recognized the same thing. They felt that, we call our profit margin as saying slightly less than 10%. And for our employees who don't understand what it means, they feel that the company is doing great and why should I be doing anything? And they realized that that was not working for us, because I see people lower down the order, not conscious about the cost. And to build that, we realized we had to train everybody on understanding the simple things about the company. What are our costs? What is our revenue? And what it means when you reduce costs in some place, considering they are in a utility company, demands increase, costs increase, but growing the base rate doesn't happen so easily. So they realized the best way for them was to train their employees. Now they did it in a very innovative way. They actually had created a simulation very specific to the company. This was again restricted to the group of those people who they felt are management or leadership material. And this simulation game that was created was like a 5-hour game. And it was almost like you're running the company for 3 years, and how your actions would actually impact the company in real time. That was the training. So they saw some amazing results because they required that these managers take it back and also train their own teams on the skills that they have learned. So they could see quite a bit of benefit. But their vision was this, that business acumen is not only for the executives, it is just about for everyone in the company. Lucent, they had a similar vision. They realized that we are not a cost plus business. I can't just keep adding, increasing my prices by saying these are my costs. So they wanted people to understand that, and they wanted the support of everyone in the company to be able to achieve that. Again, they went the training route because they believed, first, it is important for me to understand, important for me to build that capability in the people, that you understand what I am trying to achieve. They adopted a different approach. They used the balanced scorecard approach. They set up a program which they gave the flexibility to the employees. You take it online or we give you a CD and you please complete the program. They provide some support for the employees to learn about balanced scorecard to actually enable the people. So different companies have adopted different approach, but for us, the key takeaway is this. They all believed that it has to be a skill that everyone has and not just the management. Well, so that's about it. The key takeaways before I move on to question again, I'd just like to reiterate the renewed focus. The reason we are talking about it again today is it's moved. The focus is that yes, we need leaders, yes, entrepreneurial skill, it is a must, but it has moved to a skill that we are looking for at every level today for your own personal, professional benefits, but also to build organizational capabilities. And I've shown examples across departments and organizations and even benefits as an individual that you can have. So that is the key takeaway. So that's about it. Thank you so much for your time. And before I move to any questions or discussions that we want to have, I'll be happy to have that. I'd just like to share with you all the program that we have in place. We have an executive certificate in Business Acumen. We've just completed one offering of this program for a client. And the next batch is opening on 21st September. If you want to know anything about the program, you can write to me or you can reach out to the sales folks. I'll be sharing their numbers soon. So it is going to be an all-round program giving you skills, more like the balanced scorecard, 360-degree kind of training. This is the contact for the salespeople. If you're interested, just take note of the numbers, or you can always email me and get information if you need, either for yourself or for your teams or for the companies. Okay, so my mail ID. All right, Deepak, I've put in the mail ID of the corporates here. I will just put in my email ID in the chat as well. But time for questions, time for, any comments or anything you might have. You can ask me for the mic. I'll be happy to share the mic with you all, or you can type your comments in the chat box. Thanks again. And you know what? I really appreciate the fact that you all put in your responses on the chat box. So it helps me know that you're engaged and where you disagree, where the point of view differs. So this is a lot of feedback for me as well. Thank you so much for being that interactive. Yes, anyone wants to say anything, any mic? Thank you all. Thanks, Sriparna. Anyone wants the mic or anything else to share? Peter, the session is recorded, so definitely you will get a recording of the session if you've registered. If you want the slides, then yes, I can share the slides with you. Just drop me an email, please, and I'll share the slides with you. Amit, any book that I can suggest? No, I wish I had found a book. This webinar would have been a lot more easier. Right now, I think it's all disjointed, Amit, because it draws upon a lot of different areas, and that is the reason I had to take from different books. I've shared some of the books on the slides, but it's basically bits and pieces from everywhere. Can you let us know? Oh, sorry, I missed some of the posts. Let me quickly scroll back. Is there a sorry? Is it? Sorry, I missed some of the postings, so I'm just scrolling through. I want to get back. So book a session. Can you let us know where we can do these assessments? Priya, I happen to find quite a few online if you Google, but why don't you drop me a note and I will send across these links to you so I can send something more specific to you. Okay, Peter, if you're keen on what I spoke, then yes, please, you can download. The recording will be made available and you can look at the recording. Sanjay, was this targeted at sales only? Not really. I tried to keep it quite generic, but I guess, you know what, I'm surrounded with people in sales, so maybe I relate a lot more to people in the sales, so that's why it probably has sounded that way. But no, if you see the examples that are given, I think it is just for about everyone. Business strategy. Okay. Oh, thanks, Kakoli. I am glad it can be, it is an insight for you. Thanks. Okay, if I missed responding to some of your posts, then please feel free to type into the chat box again. Otherwise, again, thank you all so much. And do drop me a note. You have my email ID. You can, if you need anything more about the session, our program, or anything about Business Acumen, because I'll be taking this further, then I'll be happy to share with you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.